The newsroom. It's the dawn of a new era, you could say, for neighboring West African states. Different fates, though. Senegal, starting the week with a new president. Celebrations in Dakar after Abdoulaye Wade conceded defeat to Macky Sall in the runoff of the presidential election. A stark contrast with what's now transpired just over the border. For over 2 decades, Mali had been a shining example of democracy on the African continent. Last Thursday, it woke up to discover the overthrow of its outgoing president just over a month before voters were to pick his successor. Mali joins a long list of West African states where just inside the past 4 years, regime change has not come through the ballot box, but through assassinations, coups, and civil war. We're going to be looking at that regional context, at what's gone wrong in Mali and what's perhaps gone right in Senegal. Today, in the France 24 debate, we're looking at democracy in West Africa. With us, the director of Columbia University's Institute of African Studies, Mamadou Diouf. Welcome back to the debate.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome as well to Christopher Fomonyoy of the Washington-based National Democratic Institute, who is monitoring events as they unfold in Dakar. And also with us, reporter Michael Kirtley, reporter and documentary filmmaker. Michael Kirtley has traveled extensively in Africa, particularly in the countries that border the Sahara Desert. Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
The France 24 debate, where you can always weigh in on the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, where our handle is @FrancoisF24. Now, the irony is that up until last month, it wasn't Mali, but it was Senegal that was worrying the minds, with demonstrators killed in protesting Abdoulaye Wade's bid to hang on by hook or by crook. In the runoff, the opposition uniting behind Wade's former prime minister, the ex-speaker of parliament, Macky Sall.
We have proved to the world that our democracy has come of age. Tonight, my thoughts go first to the martyrs of democracy. I will be president of all Senegalese.
I'll be the president of all the Senegalese. Mamadou Diouf, the last time we were talking, it was still touch and go. We were wondering how things were going to unfold in Senegal. Were you expecting a quote-unquote happy ending?
I have really to say no, at least until actually the first round. I was quite convinced that it will be very difficult in the context in which Senegal was to organize fair and transparent election and to organize election without violence. But somehow at the same time it seemed that the population, in particular the youth, was quite ready to go for the election by saying we are against Wade's presence on the ballot, but it's absolutely necessary to organize the election and to defeat him. And I think what they were looking for, and it was actually reinforced by what happened in the second round, is to give a lesson to the old president, but at the same time also to prepare his successor to understand that things are going to change, that what is at stake is a redefinition of the Senegalese presidency as a function.
And it all went very quickly with Abdoulaye Wade picking up the phone. He didn't have to. He could have waited until official results came out and congratulating Macky Sall.
I think it's because of two reasons. One, he, I think at least, discovered very quickly that he lost. And if you look at the way he campaigned until the end, really pushing very hard, corrupting electors, trying to get what we call, holders of a kind of legitimacy, ethnic or religious, to support him in vain. at the same time that Macky Sall was attracting the rest of the opposition and was supported by the M23, it was obvious that he was going to fail. The second reason is a simple reason. He knows that Senegal, in particular Senegalese institutions, have a kind of culture which will never allow him to force and stay. So he did not have any other choice but leave.
What do you mean by a culture?
The culture, is why Senegal is different from Mali, is why Senegal is different from Ivory Coast. You have in Senegal a democratic culture. It's a country which has only 8 years of one rule. We forgot that. And even during the 8 year,
Single party rule.
Yeah, 1966 to 1974, dissent was still expressed. People were still engaging with the ruling party, and fighting against the ruling party. And what has happened actually from 1974 to 2000, and this process in which WAD played a key role, is reinforcing a democratic culture within an institutional space, which is a multi-party space. And the result is that from 2000 to 2012, at the same time that WAD were trying to actually destroy the whole infrastructure and all the institution which allowed a victory of his camp, people were fighting back. Still, the army, part of the police and part of the judiciary still was pushing to uphold the very fact that this is a democratic system.
All right, so
and WAD will have a lot of problem actually to go around it.
All right, so multi-party rule firmly ingrained in Senegal, according to Mamadou Diouf. Christopher Fomonyoy, in Dakar, is there a bit of surprise that it has gone off as well as it has in terms of the loser conceding defeat?
Well, I would say that there is a little bit of surprise, but more importantly, there is joy and there is relief. The Senegalese people are showing a lot of pride in themselves and in their democratic institutions. They are showing a lot of pride that Senegalese Democrats have stood up and have made their voices heard through the ballot process. And they are also relieved that their country has not been plunged into the kind of post-election crisis that we've seen in other African countries, or that was looming in the horizon just a few months ago, when everybody thought that Senegal would go down a very nasty path.
Official results not out until Tuesday at the earliest, but as we mentioned at the outset, that concession phone call from Abdoulaye Wade quickly followed up by letters addressed to both candidates from the French president. In the one addressed to the 85-year-old Wade, Nicolas Sarkozy writes, "You have once again shown the proof of your commitment to democracy."
It's great news for Africa in general and for Senegal in particular. Senegal is an important country in Africa. It has been a model for democracy and for allowing things to happen in a dignified manner. Abdoulaye Wade needs to be praised.
Michael Kirtley, on the France 24 Debate Facebook page, it seems as though some of the viewers think that the French have sort of a selective memory when it comes to which democracies they support and which ones they don't.
Yeah.
In this case, sending those letters, is that a good idea?
I think it's always a good idea to act diplomatically when a situation is over. And with Abdoulaye Wade, he's been president of Senegal for 12 years now, so it seems to me that it's only appropriate to send him out with a pat on the back. But I don't know if the Senegalese will do that. But certainly Sarkozy doing that. I don't think it's hypocritical. I think it's judicious. He's a president. He's not an outlaw.
All right. Just a few moments ago, Mamadou Diouf telling us that multi-party rule firmly ingrained. Still, huge challenges face Macky Sall now. Demography, poverty, rebellion at times in the southern province of Casamance, along with landmines there, and also corruption and a bloated bureaucracy.
We are going to get the state back under control. We will take stock of the situation and get straight to work. The state will endure. The institutions will remain, even if the people change.
Okay, so Sall has promised, for instance, to cut the number of cabinet ministers in half, and that's just one of the measures that he has promised. But how high should expectations be when he comes from originally the same party as Abdoulaye Wade?
I think the Senegalese population went already through 12 years, actually, of disappointment. The expectations were very high in 2000. If you compare with the expectation in 2012, it's very different. What actually
Hang on, you say fooled 12 years ago, but lots of roads have been built in Dakar, a lot of infrastructure. It's not all been
but the problem
corruption
is
and mismanagement.
No, the problem is nobody eats road. This is the problem. The other problem is what do you do with issues which are education issue, which are health issue. I'm not saying that Wade did not actually accomplish some very important thing, and he has to be praised with. He has rebuilt in somehow Dakar. But if you look at the money invested and the result, I'm sorry. It has opened such a huge cycles of corruption. It has not dealt with the issue, the more important issue. On one hand, he was building roads. On the other, he was building this ugly monument, which is so expensive that it's outrageous. This is the
green-built statue in Dakar of...
Absolutely. And this is actually the problem between some excellent project on one hand, but unfortunately associated with corruption, and on the other, some nonsensical projects.
So you're saying that this time around expectations are lower?
I think that one, expectations are lower. Second, and I don't know if you have heard that, people are already saying to Macky, this is a lesson for all of you. We elected you to do something very precise, and you should try to do it. He is going to have tough time. He has made promises. He will not be able, actually, to, deliver. But the problem is now, I think that the Senegalese has reached a kind of political and social and economic maturity through these 12 years, which shows quite clearly that they know, at least they have a sense, if they are informed, if they are associated, and if they are not saying these outrageous consequences of corruption, that they will be able actually to accept sacrifices, because sacrifices will be there. But of course, if Macky now will be only interested in trying to recuperate part of the PDS in order to build actually an hegemony of his own, I believe that Senegal will go through again a cycle of crisis.
All right, and you were mentioning, Chris Fomunyoy, earlier, how Senegal avoided the pitfalls of places like Ivory Coast, where the loser tried to hang on too long at the ballot box. But just tell me, there where you are in Dakar the last couple of days, how much has events across the border in Mali weighed on people's minds?
There have been a lot of discussions here in Senegal about the events in Mali with a sense of real disappointment. And I can tell you that even yesterday, as many Senegalese went to the polls, they were talking about not wanting their country to face the fate of Mali. And even by close of the polls, when the TV stations were still reporting on some of the comments that were made by President Wade when he voted in the morning, and how he still said that he thought he would win a majority because of the people who showed up at his rallies in Thiès and in other cities, tension was beginning to build. But then the returns started coming in, and by 8:30, 8:45, the call was made, and you could feel the sense of relief and tensions coming down. And all of the talk today is that what is happening in Senegal to send a new breeze of energy with regards to democratic governance across Africa, and that the situation in Mali should therefore have the Malians learn from the Senegalese experience and benefit from it. So the timing of Mali, while unfortunate for the people of Mali, may have also sent a strong signal to the various authorities here in Senegal that nothing should be taken for granted with regards to democracy in African countries.
All right, so the situation in Mali having an influence in Senegal and vice versa. We'll talk more about Mali in our second part. Just one more point before we go to the break on this. You live in New York, where there's a sizable Senegalese community. How have the Senegalese abroad weighed on events back home?
They have weighed more really powerfully in this process by first enrolling and registering to vote, but also by being very active members of parties and movement. The Yanamar movement went to New York for its campaign. The M23 visited also the Senegalese migrant, in the U.S.
So the diaspora is part of what's helping to build democracy in Senegal?
Absolutely, because they are very much involved, in particular through family and religious network in the process. Just before arriving in Paris last week, I was in a panel which was organized at the headquarters of the Association of Senegalese in America. And for 4 hours, the discussion was precisely with the representatives of both Macky and Abdoulaye Wade. A big discussion, and people were very, very, very engaged.
All right, so Senegal's democracy playing out in a globalized world. When we come back, we're going to look at the other side of the coin and how perhaps events in Senegal may influence what's going on in Mali with a junta that hasn't yet taken hold, what with the international community condemning it so far. Stay with us. This is the France 24 debate.
Cette campagne, elle trahit l'intérêt véritable des Français.
L'écologie, c'est la solution à nos problèmes. Ce n'est pas un problème.
Peuple de France, mettez à Nicolas Sarkozy un carton rouge.
Soyez là et nous réussirons le changement. Le changement, j'y suis prêt.
Nous sommes nombreux à être ceux qui résistent, ceux qui résistent, ceux qui résistent.
Aidez-moi à rassembler le peuple de France. Vous êtes le peuple de France.
Follow all the events as they happen on France 24.